So what we did during the week is each of the kids got, let's see, can somebody hold up their packet? Got one of these, a packet of all of the case materials. So everything you are going to see in trial today, they have written and come up with on their own. We do not give them a script. There is no, here's the answer, make sure you get to this point at the end of the trial. They are given witness statements, and they are given evidence, they're given the law, and we take it from there. So everything you're going to see in trial today is the product of all of them. And a little bit about the case. The case is the State versus Whitney Gray, who is being accused of arson. There was a local pub, a restaurant that was burned down on the evening of July 4th, I think 2013.
2010.
2010? A long time ago. 2010.
It's an old case, but
yeah.
just pretend.
Okay.
Justice system takes a little while.
Yeah. So this is the alleged arson trial. The prosecution is sitting over here. The defense is over here. And you're going to hear 3 witnesses from both sides, including opening statements and closing arguments.
Yeah, I guess without further ado, we can start. I'll be presiding as the Honorable Judge Anderson this first round. I haven't had a fancy robe, so feel free to laugh as I put it on. But all right, let's get started. All right, all rise. Court is now in session. We're now here, People versus Gray. You may be seated. Would the prosecution like to introduce themselves?
Hello, my name is Gary Smith,
Hi, my name is Jessica Davis.
My name is Eli Woodard.
and we are the prosecution of this jury, and we represent the state.
Thank you. Defense?
Hi, my name is Sydney Sims.
Hi, my name is Leanne Holmes.
My name is Giorgio Cora.
And we are defending Whitney Gray in today's case.
Thank you very much. Does the prosecution have an opening statement?
May it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. Setting things on fire can get you burned. The prosecution will call Ian Barr, Falcon Burt, and Lane O'Brien. Ian Barr will tell you the facts of the fire and pre-known history of the defendant. Falcon Burt will tell you about the fire and what his dog sniffed out in the fire. Lane O'Brien will tell you where he was and who he was with and his opinion on the fire and what happened. The story. On late July 4th and early July 5th, a local pub, Bellows and O'Brien's, was burned down to the ground. The only known people there right before it burned was Whitney Gray, Ashton Bellows, and Lane O'Brien. The fire had been inducted as a gas fire, and accelerants were found near a coffee pot, which had been plugged in on the floor near a rag with accelerants on it, and was near a turned-on glue gun. We are here today to provide justice and uphold the law because setting things on fire can get you burned. Miss Whitney Gray is being charged with arson after a local pub was burned down. We will show that Whitney knowingly burned down a pub with fire because of the need of money and that she would get the money from Ashton after Miss Bellows got the insurance money. Verdict. At the end of today, today's trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Eli Woodard, Mr. Gary Smith, plans to find the culprit of this heinous crime.
Thank you very much. Defense, do you have an opening statement?
May it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. In the early morning of July 5th in Thunderbird, Illinois, Bellows and O'Brien's was burned to the ground. The owners, Lane O'Brien and Ashton Bellows, had a $500,000 insurance policy. Their bartender, Whitney Gray, did not have her name on the policy. As far as anyone knows, Lane O'Brien was the last to leave the pub. Today, the defense will be presenting 3 witnesses. Jim Sendecker, who is a psychologist that talked to Whitney. Ashton Bellows, who is the property owner and friend of Whitney. And Whitney Gray, who is the bartender at Bellows and O'Brien. Miss Gray is being charged with arson after the pub Bellows and O'Brien burned down the early morning of July 5th. The prosecution claims that Whitney Gray was responsible. However, we plan to prove that Whitney has been falsely accused based on the principle of accusations, assumptions, and arson. Lane made accusations based on an assumption that Whitney committed the crime due to the relationship she has with Ashton Bellows and her previous juvenile arson that happened 10 years ago. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Adochi Okoro, will come before you in all and ask for a verdict of not guilty.
Thank you very much. Prosecution like to call its first witness.
Eden Barr.
Ian Barr. Will you please take the stand? Please remember that you have been previously sworn. You may begin.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning. My name's Eden Barr.
What is your occupation?
I'm the fire marshal for the Thunderbird Township, and I have been for about 5 years. I was a firefighter on the force for 8 years before that.
What is your involvement in this case?
I was the investigator of the fire that burned down Bellows and O'Brien, a local pub in Thunderbird. I conducted an investigation after the fire to determine whether this was an accident or whether it was intentional arson.
Do you know the people involved?
Yes, I do. I lived in Thunderbird my whole life, and I've known Ashton Bellows, Lane O'Brien, and Whitney Gray my entire life since they were kids.
Have you dealt with the pub before?
Yes, I had. I inspected the pub about 6 months ago, 6 months before the fire occurred, and recommended that they install sprinklers in the basement. They had not put those sprinklers in when the fire occurred.
So what does it take to start a fire?
Starting and maintaining a fire requires 3 things: fuel, oxygen, and heat. All 3 of those things are needed for any fire. And if any of those 3 elements is suspicious or different than it normally would be, we are trained to investigate for arson.
What were the elements that you investigated?
The fuel source was the wooden structure of the pub and the wooden furniture inside, as well as accelerants that we found at the pub: spirits, lacquer thinner for the furniture, and gasoline. The oxygen was provided by windows that were left open in the basement and upstairs that allowed an optimal amount of air to enter the building. The heat source, which was most unusual, was a coffee maker and a heat stripping gun that were plugged into the basement.
What do you mean by unusual?
Well, one of the telltale signs of arson is a heat source in a place that you wouldn't normally expect to find it, like a candle in a hallway or a coffee maker in a closet. In this case, the coffee maker and heat gun were plugged into an extension cord near some rags that were soaked in accelerant.
So do you think this was an act of arson?
Yes, I do. It seems clear to me that Whitney Gray intentionally started this fire by opening the windows and starting the ignition in the basement.
Do you have any other evidence involving the case?
Yes, we had 2 trained fire dogs come in and sniff for traces of accelerant. They found hits all over the stairs, leading me to believe that this was intentional.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination? You may begin.
Why do you believe that Whitney is the arsonist?
Well, after reviewing all the evidence and the fact that there was a heat source plugged in the basement where it shouldn't have been with rags soaked in gasoline, I was led to believe it was arson.
Has Whitney's knowledge of fires and her previous arson influenced your belief that she set the fire in any way?
It was taken into account. Whitney did start a fire when she was 14, and she was accused and pled guilty to arson.
You know how to set a fire, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So just because she knows how to set a fire and she had an incident with fire 10 years ago, you believe that she's the arsonist?
Not purely based off of that, but it doesn't help her case.
Well, Whitney had no intentions of setting the fire. She wouldn't benefit in any way.
I'm not sure whether she would or wouldn't have. It just seemed like, based off the evidence, this was arson and not an accident.
How would she benefit if she needed the job, she needed the reputation, and she had a dream of becoming a fire investigator?
I'm not really sure. I guess that's up to the court to decide. I am just here to talk about the fire.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you very much. You may be excused. The prosecution would like to call their second witness.
Prosecution calls Falcon Burke to the stand.
Ms. Burke, please take the stand. Please remember you have been previously sworn in. Prosecution, you may begin.
Ms. Burke, why are you here?
My dogs helped find the accelerants in the basement. I was also one of the firefighters that helped put out the fire.
And where are you from? What is your education?
I'm from Thunderbird, Illinois. I was born and raised here, and I started training right out of high school.
And what motivated you to become a fireman?
After Whitney set the old chicken coop in a field near our house on fire, then I was all scared and upset, and I realized I wanted to help people not feel all that when there's a fire. I want people to feel safe.
And I read in your statement that you feel as if Miss Gray should have gone to a detention center to get some help. Why is that?
I was scared and upset, and at the time I believed normal people don't do arson. I now realize that Whitney has worked hard to clean her record.
And are you still threatened by Whitney?
I respect her, but prefer to keep my distance.
And how well do you know Lane? Would you say he's a pretty good person?
I know Lane well. I often hung out at the club with him and the other firefighters. Lane also comes to the station once a month to hang out with us.
Does he visit the station often? The same time? Can you confirm he was with you on the morning of July 5th?
He does visit often. The time he comes depends on the time the pub closes. The pub is about 20 to 25 minutes away from here, so it isn't too far away. He was with us the night of the fire.
And when you arrived at the scene, did you notice anything about the fire?
It didn't act like regular fire. It didn't look or smell right either.
And what would cause it to look/smell like that?
I used some accelerant, like gasoline is one of the main reasons.
And what was found in the basement?
A coffee pot connected to an extension cord which was found on. A heat stripper was also on. Rags drenched in lacquer thinner and mineral spirits were found near both sources.
And did the dog sniff anything out?
They found gasoline, lacquer thinner, mineral spirits, and alcohol.
Can you confirm the dogs found the thinner?
I can because the lab test came back positive.
So, Ms. Burks, would you say that old wood, alcohol, and leaving the windows open contributed to the fire?
Yes, they did contribute to the fire.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you very much. We have a cross-examination. We may begin when you're ready.
Hello, Ms. Burke. So, you're one of the responding officers on the night of July 5th, correct?
Correct.
And you've known both Lane and Whitney since you were kids, correct?
Correct.
You haven't seen Whitney much in the past 10 years, correct?
Correct.
And you think there is no possible way that Lane O'Brien could have set the fire, even though he was the last one there, correct?
Well, we took everybody into account. We can't leave anybody out.
Now, Lane was the last person to leave the pub as far as anybody knows, correct?
Correct.
And you weren't with him before he came from the pub to the fire station, correct?
Correct.
And the fire investigator said that the fire could have been set earlier.
It could have.
And so you also you weren't with Lane prior to him coming to the station, correct?
I wasn't.
So that means that you can't be really sure that it was just Whitney because Lane was there left, correct?
Correct.
And also, in a previous statement from Jensen Decker, she stated that usually an arsonist calls in the fire. Even though there wasn't a call, Lane was the first to the scene of the crime before even the firefighters make it, correct?
Correct.
And so you aren't really sure that Lane didn't set the fire?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Burke, you may be excused. Would the prosecution like to call its final witness?
The prosecution would like to call Lane O'Brien to the stand.
All right. Mr. O'Brien, you may take the stand. Please remember you have been previously sworn in.
Please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Hello, my name is Mr. Lane O'Brien.
Why are you here today?
I'm here to testify that Whitney Gray and Ashton Bellows conspired to burn down the pub Bellows and O'Brien's.
How long have you known Miss Bellows?
I have known Miss Bellows since high school,
How long have you known Miss Gray?
also since high school.
Did you hire Miss Gray?
Yes, I did.
How would you describe Miss Bellows and Miss Gray's relationship?
They have been very good friends for a very long time. They have had private cookouts, private jokes, and they have been excluding me.
Was there anything that led you to believe that they conspired with one another to burn down your local pub?
Earlier on the night of July 4th, I heard them talking about at Whitney's previous arson.
Let's go to the night of July 4th. After all the patrons had left the restaurant, what happened?
We started to clean up. Whitney left before me, and Ashton also left before me. I went to the basement, made sure all the windows were closed and all the doors were locked. I also went to the loft and made sure that the windows were closed and the doors were locked.
Where did you go after you locked up in the pub?
I went straight to the fire department to play cards and watch movies.
Does your pub have an alarm system?
Yes, it does.
Who besides you have the alarm codes to the pub?
Miss Whitney and Miss Ashton.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Does the defense have a cross-examination?
Yes.
You may begin when you're ready.
Okay, so you were at the pub on July 5th, correct?
Correct.
You were also the last one at the pub, correct?
Correct.
And about once a month, you go to the fire station, correct?
Yes, I do.
Why did you decide to go this day?
Because I had work off the next day.
I mean, it seems weird that 30 days of the month, 24 hours in a day, you choose to go 4 hours before the fire started at your pub.
I had work off the next day, and so I could stay up and play cards.
I mean, are you aware that according to the fire marshal's report, the fire could have been set hours before the actual fire started?
Yes, I am aware.
You're the last one in the basement, correct?
Yes, I was.
You know the fire primarily started in the basement.
Yes, I do.
You know you were the last one on the balcony where the lacquer in your paint thin was found, with the windows wide open.
Yes.
Are you aware of Whitney's juvenile past?
Yes, I am.
You do know her last incident was 10 years ago.
Yes, I do.
Do you believe people can change?
Yes, but Whitney has been talking a lot about it recently.
I mean, that's really funny because do you remember you blamed Ashton and Whitney right away?
Yes.
In fact, the fire marshal started asking you questions and you froze instantly and pointed a finger.
I went into shock for a while.
I mean, like, isn't? Okay, no further questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. O'Brien, you are excused. At this time, I believe the prosecution rests its case in chief. Before we begin with the defense's case in chief, we'll take a 5-minute recess.